Sunny ways, my friends, sunny ways.
Sunny ways, sunny ways. Welcome to another episode of Irnieracing News. Today, we're getting into Trudeau's new budget with the capital gains tax, which is freaking out Canadians, not just the 1%, but most Canadians.
So listen, let's begin with the budget, obviously, because you have now these high-profile Canadians, a former Bank of Canada governor, two former Liberal finance ministers, essentially joining in on the criticism that we're hearing from the Conservative Party on this budget. How problematic is that for the government, Susan, as they try to sell this budget to Canadians?
Oh, it's no big deal. We do whatever we want. We're just taking orders from the WEF. And we don't care what Canadians think, or your economists, or our opposition. Everybody's our opposition now.
With me now is the Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister, TRUDEAU Freeland. Let's start with the increase in capital gains tax. I believe you were saying it will affect 0.1% of Canadians, the very wealthy. Can you explain exactly who will pay more, who you're targeting? Is it going to include, for example, someone's elderly aunt who is thinking of selling the family cottage?
The question is, Freeland, who are you targeting?
Well, let me start with who is excluded, because that is the vast majority of...
Wait. That's not the question. The question is, who is paying the capital gains tax? Who is your target?
Start with who is excluded, because that is the vast majority of Canadians. More than 99% of Canadians will not pay as individuals.
Who will not pay as individuals? Why did she say that? So, because families have their income combined and then they own cottages. How many Canadians own second homes? And those second homes, those cottages, or those houses passed down? Look, even the emergency services is concerned about your statement.
A higher rate of capital gains, and I just want to be sure people understand that. So the most important thing, the biggest asset most Canadians own is their home. Our homes are all fully excluded from capital gains taxation.
But from everyone else's understanding, that's only your primary residence. So anyone that owns a second home or a cottage or etc., anyone who makes over $250,000 in 1 year or has value of that is going to be taxed an extra 26%. So all of a sudden, is the market going to start flooding with houses coming up here before June? Are people who make significant amounts of money being affected? Is the 1% actually being affected, or they're the ones that are going to gobble up all these homes now?
That continues to be the case. The second thing which we are bringing in is a new tier. And this tier means that the first $250,000 of a capital gain in every single year that a Canadian might enjoy is taxed at the current rate of a 50% inclusion. So you actually only pay any tax at all on 50% of it. And it's because of that really narrow focus, which is entirely intentional, that this additional tax is really focused on those at the very top, on people who can afford to pay a little bit more to make the investments that our country really needs.
Oh, to make the investments that our country really needs. So you're making a budget to borrow more, 10th year deficit. So how many billion, was it 46 or 56 billion dollars of debt being paid this year alone, which equals the GST. So all the GST that you're taxing us on is going all towards the debt that you keep propping up and making bigger and bigger and bigger. And no wonder you're mad the bank's interest rate is really high, because now the debt is even more on the interest rate factor. Oh, yeah. This is all in the interest of Canadians and the WEF, right?
That especially young Canadians really need.
So I'm not exactly clear on who that is then, and you know that the business community is already saying that by doing this, it's sending the wrong message for a country that has a big problem with productivity.
With regard to the capital gains tax increase, which is substantial and will not be hurting the richest of the rich, as many small business groups and journalists now, it's taken a couple of days for the dust to settle on this. They're pointing out, hey, you're really giving a sock in the jaw to a lot of small business people, entrepreneurs, artisans who, they don't get a government pension. They might have bought a triplex, live in one of them, rent out the other two. All of a sudden, they're going to get hit with a whopping increase in their capital gains. A 33% increase in what has to be brought into income. People are finally starting to notice that and know it's not Trudeau going after the super rich. He's going after super ordinary Canadians, and they're starting to see it.
I think what the CTV NDP correspondent Tom was trying to say is that Canadians that bought a triplex, I think that was the word, like a duplex, triplex. So if you're renting out two of those triplexes, you're going to pay capital gains on that. And so now people are going to be like, well, my rental income property is not what it was supposed to be.
And also just average Canadians, if you have a cottage or any property or anything like that, if you want to sell, you'll be paying for that as well, or through inheritance.
Exactly. And even if you give it to your kids, it's a deemed disposition, and you still hit with the full whack of this new capital gains tax. So I don't know where Freeland got her number. She said it's 0.14. That's pretty specific percent of Canadians who are going to be hit by this. But I guess it was some sort of number put together by the gnomes in the finance department saying, oh, well, we have this many last year, and therefore it translates to this percentage of the population. But look, Roger, I was talking yesterday to somebody who's been in real estate for 25 years. In the area where I am, there are indeed a lot of cottages and a lot of triplexes and four unit buildings. And she was saying, look, over the next 9 weeks, it's going to be total chaos because people are going to start unloading because this new massive tax increase that Trudeau has brought in on the middle class is only going to kick in on June 25th.
June 25th, 2024. A lot of people don't even realize that this is kicking in this year. Some people think this is, oh no, this is next year. No. This is this year. First is the carbon tax. Now it's going to be June 26th. So guys, the market is going to be for sale soon enough. People are taking their money out of Canada.
So people are going to be unloading properties between now and then. And who's going to be soaking up those properties? People who have lots of cash. Maybe the rich are the ones who are benefiting from Trudeau's thing. And he's still trying to sell this as him standing up to the wealthy and Poilievre defending them. Poilievre's doing nothing of the kind. He's sticking to his basic messages about the cost of living, housing, inflation, groceries, and the like. He's not taking the bait that Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland ham-fistedly try to put out there.
Raise one thing with you. Your critics say that the Liberals are good at addition, not so good at subtraction. And that right now the cost of servicing the debt in Canada is $46 billion in 2023-24. That's more than, I think, what is spent on the Canada Health Transfer. Your critics say spending measures on top of that are reckless. What do you say to them?
Well, I say actually that is economically illiterate.
Well, I say that is economically illiterate. Or was it economically illiterate? Oh, no.
Misleading because the rate of tax on capital gains is lower than the rate on ordinary income. But of course, all of the rates are progressive. And once you get to, ordinary income of roughly $200,000 per year, you're paying a lot more. In province of Ontario, you're paying almost 54% of your incremental income in tax. And if you look at the analysis of who's paying the tax, the more people that are earning more are paying a lot more. They're paying a lot higher rates and they're paying a lot more money. So that's why it's very hard to go down this road of saying, well, what's fair? What's the right amount? The finance minister for Louis XIV in France once said that the art of taxation was to extract the largest number of feathers from the goose with the least amount of complaint from the goose's beak. And there's a point at which, when the government becomes the senior partner in an individual's economic relationship, then you discourage them from working. You may encourage them to move elsewhere. They are mobile.
Well. Doesn't that work into their whole plan, the WEF, the plan of the 15-minute cities, that everyone's going to work for the government. Government is already big government. 25% of the workforce of Canada is government employees. Pretty soon it's going to be 50% of the population works for the government. Everyone is suckling at the tits of the government. And if you go against the government, whether you speak out to it or you do an action against it, well, then all of a sudden the faucet of the titty is turned off and you're screwed. You are blacklisted. You can't buy food, you can't get medical, you can't leave the province, you can't leave the city, your vehicle, you can't get insurance. This is communism, fascism, or collectivism as we know it.
And you end up getting less revenue, not more. So my fear in this, you remember, Michael, I was in the Liberal government in the 1990s. We actually brought that inclusion rate back down to 50% from 66 and 2/3%. The reason was it wasn't raising much money. And I think if you go back to the numbers, you'll see that at 50%, it actually raised more money than it did at 66 and 2/3%. Why? Because people would just sit on their assets. Why sell it? The government's going to take too much. And that's not the kind of intervention in the economy that's healthy. So I think it's a mistake.
I don't know how you guys feel, but I already feel like we've been overtaxed for so long. I can't believe how much money is robbed from us. And it's not for building roads. Everybody's like, oh, I paid for that road to be built. I'm like, oh my God, the amount of money to build that road is that fraction of a fraction? No, all the money is for bureaucratic spending for the warmongering mostly. $15 trillion military industrial complex. Let's go send billions to Ukraine. Let's start a food program for kids in schools, but 3 years later, not one sandwich has been made, as Polyev said the other day. But a lot of people made a lot of money, and it's just like in the U.S. All the Senate, they all vote for war against Ukraine, more ammunition for Ukraine, and then as soon as they write an article or vote for that, well, they're all of a sudden getting rich themselves, because if you do this, then you gain this. The corruption is out of control, guys.
Quickly running out of time, but I do want to ask you, in the less than 1 minute I have, the inclusion rate on capital gains is one thing. The other criticism this government is facing is the fact that it's laid out no path to balance. Does that still matter, do you think?
Well, I think it matters. And I'll give you just two numbers since we're short on time. One is government spending has doubled compared to the last year of the Harper government. And not only that, the carrying charges on our debt have also doubled, so that we're now paying as much interest on debt as the government is generating from GST revenue. Those are both worrying things because eventually the piper calls the tune and you will have to make some cuts. That's what we went through in the 90s. It was unpleasant and it was difficult. Canadians largely supported it, but
there he goes. He says it right there. All the GST revenue gone to the debt, to paying the debt, which has doubled since the Harper government. The size of the government has doubled since the Conservatives. The expenditure for the government has doubled. And what do we have in exchange for it? We got 5 times more homeless, 5 times more theft, and everything is 2 to 5 times more expensive. Everybody, even if you have a good job of $100,000 a year, everybody is complaining about the cost of food and how at the end of the day, the government is taking everything from tax and then the rest of it goes to your food, into your insurance, and there's no money left in housing and rental, and there's no money left over to enjoy life. And welcome to Canada, guys. So let's move on to now, what do the premiers think about Trudeau's new totalitarian lifestyle and budget here coming forward?
In a recent letter, all 13 premiers accuse Ottawa of encroaching on their jurisdiction, with plans to spend billions more on housing, pharmacare, and a new dental program. Trudeau says he's only spending more because premiers aren't doing enough.
I'd always rather work with provinces, but if we have to, I will go around them and be there for Canadians.
I will go around anybody, any premier. I'm running the show here. Well, the WEF is running the show, and I'm running the show locally for the WEF, and nobody's going to get in my way, including you Canadian citizens. You good luck having an election. Ha 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 ha. Irnieracing News.